Hello and welcome to the Slugger O'Toole party election broadcast review for the 2023 local elections. We'll be going through all the party election broadcasts for the 5 main parties, ranking each out of 10, and we will crown a winner of this year's election season's party election broadcast. And to start off with, we're going to look at the Democratic Unionist Party's edition this year and see how they have done. Okay, so we've taken a look at the DUP, so now let's get the scores and the verdict. I'm going to go to you, Chris, first of all. What did you make of the DUP's attempt this year?
Well, I suppose it was a relatively middle-of-the-road effort. Once again, I think Sir Geoffrey, the builder, can he fix it? We still don't know. He's the cleanest looking builder I've ever seen in my life. Are we to read anything into the fact that the house hasn't been completed yet? I hope to God we don't, but maybe an extra mark for a wee bit of creativity and trying something new, but overall possibly a wee bit lacklustre. Isn't it funny that a party that maybe would have advocated the tying up of the swings on a Sunday are now telling the world that they are funding and helping to fund play parks all across Northern Ireland. So once again, the southern message where it used to be about agriculture, single farm payment, farming issues is now turned into rural broadband and providing connectivity to housing. So what we kind of expected from the DUP over the years is slightly augmented, and yet again, a wee bit of creativity hasn't hurt, but it's still just an okay effort.
Okay, Alan.
You're going to get a score off them, or are you going to wait?
No, I'm going to wait.
We're going to wait. I think we should kind of, we need to kind of say that we're, as we're kind of like, we're assessing these like super stupidly seriously on, in a sense, like their production values, and really the mark doesn't, one of these is going to win, but it has nothing to do with the actual policies behind the party. And the one who wins may not even do well in the election, that's not our fault. But so we need to kind of divorce ourselves a wee bit from the seriousness of what we're doing here. I thought Jeff the builder, can he fix the ugly scaffolding? Yes, he maybe can. It's kind of quite a good extended metaphor. I mean, they do keep coming back to building. There's something a bit kind of evangelical Protestant as well about kind of building. It's really kind of like building on the rock and the sand and things. It felt like there could be a children's chorus in there. The wee song in the background is unfortunately, it's called Dare to Dream, but unfortunately it's by a band called, or a composer guy called Balloon Planet. So
you really researched this one?
Well, you just hold Shazam up to the iPlayer as you listen to it and discover where to get the music from. So anyway, that's there we go. Always be careful where you get your music from, because it's not the best look. I did like the fact they talked about a council achievement, which was just the swings. The broadband, that was confidence and supply money, so that's kind of like, it took a long time to spend that money. Yeah, we only make progress. The Unionists and Nationalists work together. It's very 2 tribes instead of 3 tribes. Obviously, you don't have, maybe the reality for them is you don't need alliance and the Greens to do anything. I thought it was okay. I thought it's one of the better ones in my view.
Okay. Alison, what do you make of it?
Well, having also extensively researched it, like Alan.
Balloon Planet.
Yeah, I spent weeks researching this. What I will say is, Geoffrey as a builder is incredibly implausible. Having met Geoffrey Donaldson, you can't imagine him laying brick. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah, very hard.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, which is why the guy who actually was laying the brick was all fuzzy in the background. The guy was actually doing some work. And I was half expecting, someone to jump out dressed as the policeman and the Red Indian and all the other cast of the YMCA, so we could finish the whole lot off. But he did tick the boxes, because we have said year on year when we do this, don't put your MLAs, don't put your MP team, put your councillors, and the councillors were in it. So they went for a city councillor, a rural councillor.
Yep.
They ticked all the boxes that way, and that's always really important. Put your candidates up front and centre. Where some of the parties I think have failed in the past. So I like that. It was quite a high production value. The thing about the swings and the special needs park, it means so much to so many people, but it's also happening in a time when special needs education is being cut and there's no one to allocate money because Stormont is down and there are no ministers. So he's saying we achieved this, but at the same time too, we all know that the hold up and a lot of funding for those very special projects is being held up because of the collapse of Stormont. Will it play up with his voters? There wasn't a lot of Union Jacks. There wasn't a lot of we are British. There was not enough flag waving, which we have always associated with those DUP party election broadcasts in the past. It was toned down. I mean, had not been Geoffrey Donaldson, could have been any party really standing there. There was none of the sort of trappings of the DUP. But apart from that, I'll give them extra points for making sure they ticked all the boxes with their councillors, and I would like to see the spec on that house when it's finished, just to make sure that it came up to standards.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was good that they referenced council. Also, interestingly for a DPPB, gender balanced as well.
Yeah.
They're not always gender balanced. A lot of their candidates were younger as well, which I thought was good. They're in competitive seats as well. I mean, the building thing did take me a bit of time to get used to as well. But again, I suppose for the DUP narrative, you can understand why they've gone that way. I thought that it was the most alliance-y PEB we've had from the DP in a while, like unison nationalists working together, and when we work together, we can build a okay house, I suppose. You know, we can build a house. And it
never actually mentions the executive. It only implies that whole bit at the
it
beginning only
also
implies
doesn't,
executive.
because last year we critiqued the DUP PEB about the negativity against Sinn Fein, and this one didn't even mention them. So I thought points for that as well. So Chris, what did you give it out of 10?
I'll be the same, Pat. 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Okay, Alan.
It's getting 7.5 out of 10.
7.5.
If we're allowed halves.
Yes, you're allowed halves. Yeah, you can do it. Alison.
I'm going to give it a 7 too, because apart from the fact it was slightly odd, it did tick all the boxes in terms of council representation.
Well, I'm going to stay in line with Chris and Alison. I give it a 7 out of 10 as well. So that's
I'm the outlier.
So you're the outlier. You've given it a wee bit of a tick up. We're going to move on now to Sinn Fein, who have done well in previous PEBs. They didn't do well in our last local election PEB, and they didn't do well in that local election either. So we'll take a look at Sinn Féin's effort, and we'll come back to see what everyone thought. Okay, so that was Sinn Féin's effort in this for this local election season. Alison, I'll kick off with you. What did you make of Sinn Féin's PEB this year?
So in the last election, I think that Sinn Féin found that they had this winning formula, which was optimism above all else, and their party members are told no negativity on social media, no attacking other parties, keep it positive. And that really worked for them, let's face it, in those assembly elections. And Michelle O'Neill, just to give the Belfast Telegraph a plug, in our opinion polls showed that all of what she has done in terms of meeting with King Charles, attending the Queen's funeral, they all pushed her popularity rating up quite high. So clearly they've made a decision that this is the sort of presidential style election, put her front and centre. And do the same thing that they did. It's actual replica of the assembly election. Show her out and about, meeting kids, taking selfies with babies, with old people, but there's no council candidates there. And a lot of what she spoke about had absolutely nothing to do with council politics. Council politics, and I know I've said this 100 times, it's not the West Winds, let's face it, it's not West Wing politics, it's not glamorous, it's not, exciting, it's the bread and butter stuff, it's the bins, it's the parks, it's the rates. There was none of that. I think they should have had some, especially some of their candidates in seats at their target, and they should have at least had them there. I managed to count Michelle O'Neill, Mary Lou McDonald, Conor Murphy, Deirdre Hargey, and John Finucane. Not one of those people are anywhere near council, and they were the only people that were spotted throughout that. So, there is a real, I think, in Sinn Féin, they find something that works and they're sticking with it. But at the same time, I do think that's to the detriment of their other party members, because there's no progression to bring them along. So if they have a couple of really good media performers, but if one of them slips over and breaks their leg and the other one goes on holiday, they've no one to replace them, because they're not bringing those young people out and sticking them in front of a camera and media training them, getting them used to that. So I know she's really popular, and I know from speaking to people, she's now probably at the height of her popularity, and are maybe hoping to cash in on the coronation and everything that will come from that. But you could have had her with some of the council candidates as well. Yeah,
Chris, what do you make of it?
And just to build on Alison's point, some of the stuff that you see on Twitter week in, week out are the activists out painting fences, and I noticed some guys out with a big, huge tank on their back, spraying weed killer on weeds.
Is there? I wonder if my
house. That happens week in, week out, and you always see it, and there's none of that. And actually, that's what you'd probably like to see in a council orientated PEB. But to be honest with you, very clean and easy, very confident, not a blockbuster by any shape or form. The focus on Michelle, and even Fitness Michelle was in there too, high-fiving kids. What other candidate have we seen running around? Never mind doing it to that effort.
Jeffrey Donald's built a house. What are you talking about? An entire house by himself.
He built a house. Michelle's run a marathon.
Exactly. So it's kind of really clean and easy in terms of the style of it. that emphasis on Michelle obviously is the best asset and stuff too. I noticed that, you know, with this no frills approach, there was also bits of Titanic in there, but there's also a frame of, I think it's a Castlereagh Road, full of Union Jack bunting. I don't think I've seen that before. I can't remember.
Union Jack's the Sinn Fein.
Yeah, so it's
it's
the camogie player in the UP type idea. So there's a bit of transfer there too. So all in all, the usually good effort from Sinn Fein, placing Michelle at the heart of it, but doesn't really give the activists and the local councillors their place.
Alan. I mean, you could have used this for the next election or the last one.
Yeah.
It's new, but it's. I mean, we had one. If you're boring, if you're nerdish and you're at home and you've watched these for a while, we've done them for 3 years, maybe longer, 4 or 5. John Finucane, there's one that was basically he fronted the entire thing, and just a couple of other people kind of came in. This one has Michelle. I mean, I don't like the format because it doesn't mention council, but on the other hand, it seems to work for them. So I'm slightly impressed that they're out counter-cultural.
Assembly election. She's popular and she's warm, and you know, people radiate towards her, and so they think of using it. But I
mean, it ticks the park run box. It might not have been a park run, but it looks like it in your head.
David's not it. He's no longer. He's a shunner now.
I can say that. I can say that, but you know he can't.
I'd be in bed hungover when he's running.
Leadership delivering for all. There are wee phrases that they nearly all of these 5 that we look at have exactly the same thing. They're all talking about the same thing. One of the weird things in it is, and I'm only saying this because we're literally looking at the aesthetics of the whole thing, but Michelle's parting changes sides. So
I did not notice that.
Well, there's the shots behind the desk. It's on the right hand side, but the shot nearly all but one other shot. It's on the other. Now I'm sure it's kind of possible she's just changed her style.
Move the border.
I'm kind of want to nearly ask you: is there like political science? Is there comms theory behind?
I'll have to think about
changing your hair, you know, kind of mid campaign or something, as to what it looks like.
Maybe it's like a camera flip. It could be something simple as that.
But it didn't seem to be, because it worked for the other shots. But it was one of the things that that wouldn't have been a thing. You would look very consistent across it all, and that was just because people do look. You get used to them, particularly when you're looking for 2-3 minutes in a row. You kind of go, you've kind of like your mirror image of yourself. I think she does it well.
Only me and you did our homework for this, Alan, isn't it? Like, we're the only people that seem to have done any research at all.
Okay, that's...
what did you notice, David?
I did, all that went over my head. I'll be honest with you.
You just heard parkrun.
I didn't go that far into it, to be honest with you. For me, I thought, it was very Michelle-centric and focused. The one thing for me was, again, no council candidates, which I thought was a wee bit odd. It almost struck me as a bit of a manifesto for an executive coming back, really, which is obviously where Sinn Féin are very much pitching themselves at the minute. But look, Sinn Féin always do a solid job, you know, production-wise. The imagery was great, very optimistic, very uplifting. It's got even the same theme music as last year's PEB, so again, they're sticking very much with that narrative. So yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was decent.
Are there things that they didn't say, though? They didn't say we want to be the largest party in terms of the number of councillors, which is something that they've said since, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the feeling that that was a party election broadcast to attract people who might not be in their party. It was it was an advert for the party, as opposed to, it was inviting voters as opposed to inviting to get their vote out. Yeah. So I kind of wonder, was it quite cleverly somebody sat for 10 minutes and strategized?
We're all saying this, but like, we're all assuming that voters are going to go out and vote on local government issues, where the reality is very few, I would punt, will end up actually voting on business. Yes. So let's get some scores in from you all. Chris, what'd you give it out of 10?
Probably the same as the DUP. I'll give it 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Okay, and Alan?
I'm giving it 7, which is half a point below, because it didn't really mention council.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, because Sinn Féin will tell you, we are not politicians, we're activists, so put your activists in your party election broadcast. You wouldn't exist without them, so because of that, I'm going to knock a half point off and give them 6.5.
6.5, okay. I'm consistent with most of you and giving them 7 out of 10. So that's the scores on the doors for Sinn Féin. We're going to move on now to the Alliance Party. They are a bit like the Ireland of the PEB awards. They've won this quite a few times. So we'll go on.
But whether they get through from the semi-final to the final, it will be a very Eurovision.
We'll see. We'll see. But we'll go in and we'll look at the Alliance Party now, and we'll come back and we'll talk about their effort this year. And that was Alliance's effort this time. We're going to kick off with you, Alan. What did you make of the Alliance Party's 2023 PEB?
Well, it's quite familiar to us, having done this so many years, that they tend not to do them with actual people in them, so they've kind of gone for the cartoon infographic kind of style before. They don't have the Ginger Ninja kind of character any longer. They've moved away from that, but it's an evolution of where they were. In terms of how they want to present the content, they're doing lots and lots of executive stuff, so it's about ransom, politics, health, education, environment, transport, safer care, kids and things. But I think what they do manage to do, if they kind of get half a point back that we're nearly about to kind of take off, is that they connect it with back in 2019, it looks like some of you came out and voted for change and wanted as a protest, so 2023, can you do the same thing again? So at least they connected back to say they're honest enough to say this is a council vote about a protest in their view. So I thought it was at least honest in the fact that they weren't talking about council issues at all. I don't think there's anything in it, but at least they made the pitch implicitly as opposed to, or explicitly, as opposed to just kind of making this implicit thing of saying this is really about the thing. So yeah, it's kind of meh. But it's kind of an okay mate. I mean, it's probably easier. I'd love to know from the parties whether it's cheaper and faster and less effort to do that, because you only need to get the script, and then you can argue, one person can argue with an animator to do the rest, whether that takes a whole lot of time and effort, because it might be a whole lot faster for them to do it than everybody else who has to send people around to Derry and Belfast and rural places. And,
Okay. Chris, what do you think?
I think it's a really well executed, tried and tested approach, because when you think about it, all that effort that goes into getting people outside on a sunny day and no wind is just crazy when you think it actually can be done very quickly. And can it be done quickly? It probably can't, though. That's the other thing as well too, because do you script these things first and edit the images you do? Do we do it as a business with designers? Yes, we do, and it does take a hell of a lot of effort. I think Naomi's voice is perfect for these sort of things. She could sell you car insurance. She has that ability to sell you anything, I think. So there's an intelligence in that too. And there's no fear, yes, talking about the language of possibility and all the great things we could be, but actually the pointing out of this isn't great, lads, and we need to realise that it's not great, permeates throughout the thing as well. So I think we have to give it an extra point for the creativity, because nobody else is doing this, and I'm so surprised that nobody else is doing this, because the effort seems worth it. And why wouldn't you try and emulate that? So all in all, probably higher marks for what it does. Has it delivered extra votes? Has it delivered extra seats over the years, this approach? It has.
2019, there was a bit of a surge.
It absolutely has. So why would you not continue that path?
Go for it. Okay.
Well, if Sinn Fein were trying to keep things positive, I was like looking on my phone for flights to Australia. I was going to emigrate. It was all terrible. It was awful. We're falling apart. Government doesn't work. Naomi was giving me a history lesson in the last friggin' 10 years of the Assembly and how it's been a mess. Again, as you said, not one of those issues. Health and things that are so important, and I'm sure that when people are knocking doors, that's the issues that are being talked about, but not one of those things get a single person council change. So it's again not given all of those new councillors, who I couldn't tell you half their names, who were elected in 2019, were still anonymous. It's still the Naomi Long party. In terms of trying to get people out in the production value and how much these things cost, you can see what Sinn Fein have done. If you look at their social media, they film Michelle O'Neill every day of the week. So all of that footage exists, and they just tie it all together. The DUP obviously found a building site and snook in at night and cut through the fence. When the security
we have no evidence that they did that, but it would be funny if they did. Here's the behind the scenes of it.
During the bank holiday weekend. But in that one, it's hiring somebody to do that for you. It's probably worth it. In terms of who's going to vote for Alliance, are they going to be changed by that? People are going to vote for Alliance anyway, because they're voting for a very specific reason. I do take on board what you said, that protest vote, because the council elections, are these council elections actually about your street, street cleansing and all this here, or is this going to be a protest vote at the collapsed assembly? Because voters will punish people in terms of issues like that, and if this is the only avenue they have to punish you, this is the one they'll choose. So she's trying to tap in on that, but it fell a bit flat. I thought it fell a bit flat, really, the way through. There was one note, it didn't go up, didn't go down, it was just one note.
Well, I thought it was because last time in 2019 when they did their PEB, they actually profiled some of their target candidates. Like they profiled Kate Nicholl, Mickey, Murray, some of the other people were actually profiled in it, and they started off the thing about giving their job titles at the start, and then it's like at the end of it they came back again, alliance activist, local alliance councillor, just show their regular people. They didn't really do any of that this time, which I thought was a bit of a come down. But I agree with Chris in terms of the presentation of it, in terms of engagement, watching through them. You know, Alliance was sitting in the middle of the PEBs that I watched, and this did kind of did come to life for me, and it did engage me more, and the visuals of it. I also thought for the Alliance pitch message about things aren't working. Don't forget, Alliance's whole critique is that this place, as it's structured, does not work. Yeah. So I thought that worked for the Alliance voter. It
didn't work. That's what you're saying. That it doesn't work. Works.
No, it worked. But I do understand how I can make someone book a flight to America or something like that, and not come back. But anyway, sure, we'll get to the scores. Alan, what did you make? What did you come out of 10?
I think it probably got 7.5. It's kind of around the DUP one with me. I tried to do something and I did it.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
I suppose when you look at these things, who watches TV anymore? It's on after the news, but this could be used for that purpose, but it also sits quite neatly in social media as well, and has that wee bit of eye candy about it. So best in class, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10, okay. And Alison?
Oh, I'm really disagreeing with all of this. I just don't like it. No, I'm going to go to 6.
A 6, okay. Ranking it down, I agree with Chris. I gave it an 8 out of 10, just for target theme, its presentation, and I thought it did work. Although it would have got a 9.
I'm like a child who needs to see people.
No, it would have got it would have got a 9 had it profiled some local government issues, some of the councillors. It would have got a 9. Even in kind of cartoon form, that would have been funny. They did that with Anna Lowe in 2014. They put her up as in a bit of cartoon form, so that would have been interesting to see. But anyway, we will move on. We go on to the Ulster Unionist Party. They won last year.
That song,
the Union of People. If you're not a fan of the theme song, you're going to be very disappointed. But we're going to go and take a look at the Ulster Unionist Party's entry this year. So that was the Ulster Unionist entry. I make it seem like it is the Eurovision Song Contest. Yes. So that was their PEB for 2023. Alison, I'm going to go to you first of all. What did you make of the Ulster Unionist broadcast?
So we're fresh out of the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Clearly, they want to remind people of Dave Trimble's role in the Good Friday Agreement. It was their finest hour. They're trying to remind people this is what the Ulster Unionists were. This is what we sacrificed. This is what we're all about. But after that, it went way off the rails. I thought. I didn't like the production of it, that wee weird ticker tape thing that kept coming across with things written on it. I don't know what that was all about. I'm sure that could have been much better organised than what it was. They used a lot of very old footage, so it didn't feel fresh, it didn't feel new, it didn't feel up to date. The stuff about the inclusion and the Union of People, we've heard all that before, and we know that that's what they're trying to target. They're trying to target that soft unionist, but to do that, they also have to, I think, emphasise the unionism of it as well, and not look like a Alliance Party light, So there was nothing particularly new in it. I will give them credit that their council candidates appeared throughout it, which some of the other parties haven't bothered doing. They didn't have Doug Beattie doing the sort of narrative the whole way through it in the way Michelle O'Neill or Naomi Long or Jeffrey Donaldson would have done. But I think it started off, I was like, I understand what's happening here. They're going to really try and cash in on the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which actually could have worked. It might have worked if they'd have stuck with that theme, but then it looked like that was an afterthought through it and starting and then moved on, and a lot of it was old and a bit tired. They need new ideas and new voices, I think.
Okay. Alan, what do you make of it?
It's a bit higgledy-piggledy. I mean, it's even quite a slow start into the Good Friday Agreement stuff at the beginning.
I was looking at a technical term for it, but higgledy-piggledy, I think sums it up. That's what I was trying to get at. It's a bit mishmash, it's all over the place.
There's other words that would describe it, but it's not a good, I don't think it's a good start because it's very slow. The second 2/3 of it is kind of, it's better. I mean, it's an okay idea. I mean, I've made similar videos for people, not for party election broadcasts, but, we'll take a speech, take a couple of bits out of it that looks like a conference speech with the kind of screen behind them, and then kind of put other bits in between. The problem is we've seen the other bits in between before. Now, we may be the only 4 people in the world who've actually seen it before, because we've watched them, but I've seen the mod or whatever, kind of as we scooter and things, we've seen some of those other bits. So they're kind of, it's a mishmash of a conference speech that was already been taped and previous broadcasts.
Yeah.
or that song from before and they've kind of merged it together, put Good Friday Agreement in the front. So I mean, it's the kind of thing a client would ask you to do, but I don't think it particularly works. It's also very odd because like we see Robbie Butler and his wee name comes up, but we never hear him. So there's a whole series of people who come up, and maybe it's just good to kind of put the names up and then people know what they are.
Yeah.
There's a science behind recognition, at least if that was your councillor or your candidate, but it's just all over the place. It has no coherence, and for that,
Yeah.
I think it does quite badly. But it's where they are.
Okay, Chris.
I suppose Higgledy Piggledy Mishmash is the name of a great song.
Shazam doesn't come up with
yeah,
that.
it's a Eurovision winner. Higgledy Piggledy Mishmash by Finland. I think this could have been a far better party election broadcast. I think they had a formula before that they've completely disassembled and tried to put back together again, and it hasn't worked. I think we had a bit of a wee treat with the young Camogie player the last time. They've just used it again, so why wouldn't you use that idea and the reaction they got and do something else that might be
It would cost more.
a bit of a reach across the divide, a hurler of Gaelic football or something a wee bit different. It wouldn't have cost the earth. And the bit at the end where the young girl, the lady's getting into the taxi at the bus stop, I just don't get that whatsoever. I'm wondering why she's doing that. Has the bus not turned up?
Yeah.
Has the UP missed the bus?
Is Jeffrey driving the bus? Having built his house?
He's driving a digger down the road. I think they could have upped their game here. They decided obviously not to. The stuff at the start wasn't great. I think they really had a moment when they had the singer last time around. I think that thing carried it because of the lyrics and the song as well. And they just completely seem to have stripped that back, just the melody, and it's a bit strange and not really worth the effort. I don't think. I don't mean that to be in a negative or disparaging way. I think they had something there, and for some reason they've got in the way of themselves.
I can't believe that we're saying that we're missing the baby shark equivalent of political tunes that never leaves your brain once you hear it. But you do sort of miss it, did you? You did miss that.
But it was coherent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is an incoherent bit of content.
Yeah. I didn't like that it was basically propped up by a conference that happened in 2021. And I thought we're in 2023. You needed new, updated material. You look at how the other parties have you need to be fresh. You need to be updated. I mean, that conference was a long time ago. They did profile some of their councillors, which, in fairness to them, they deserve some credit for. But I didn't really understand the Good Friday Agreement thing at the start and how that melded with the local election or the political context of the messaging for the Ulster Unionist Party today. Also, they were talking about forward confident unionism, and I don't know how you do that by talking about something that was 25 years ago. But anyway, it didn't really work for me, and probably because the UP did such a good effort last year. I mean, I would look back at our feedback and we were all very universally praising of it, even though, the song did stick in people's heads.
It really was.
It did stick in people's heads. So for me, it was a 6 out of 10. It just didn't do it for me this year. But Chris, what about you?
6 out of 10 as well.
Okay, Alan.
5.5.
5.5, and Alison.
I'm going 5.5.
5.5. Okay, so poor Ulster Unionist Party. Haven't done well in this year's go around.
But there is all to play for.
There's all to play for. We still have one more party to go through.
And they could still top the election. They could still beat everybody else.
Yeah, we will see. But look, we've still got one more party to go to. We're going to go to the SDLP this time and see their edition and see what they've come up with this year for their party election broadcast. Okay, so that was the SDLP's offering this time. Chris, I'll go to you first of all. What do you make of SDLP 2023?
I thought there were some lovely shots here. It got a bit Codaline in places.
Looking into the distance.
I'd be surprised if a few sort of broken bottles in the hotel lobby thrown in for good measure. I thought the performances were quite solid. There's a bit in the middle of it though, the grading goes a wee bit strange in terms of the park, but the shot of Cara on the beach with the zoom in and the waves coming in, like, it's amazing. It's actually quite spectacular in comparison to the stuff that's thrown out in these party election broadcasts. Surprised didn't see Matthew O'Toole in there because leader of the opposition, quite a capable young man, one of the best assets they have, which people will always tell you. They might have used him better, if not at all. I don't think he appeared whatsoever.
No, he didn't appear at all. Claire Hanna as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, where are these people if it feels like the party really needs to fight for their survival in these things, why would you not put your best assets forward like the other parties as well too? Some of the SDLP candidates in local councils are fantastic individuals and they're very well known, but there's now a departure of some of those individuals and they need to be backfilled. So, you know, obviously a good opportunity to bring more candidates in. They should have done that maybe with Claire and Matthew to try and get everybody their 15 seconds of fame. Didn't seem to do that. Colum's a very good speaker. They use him brilliantly all the time. Not so sure about all the fluffy mics that appear in things. But overall, I think, you know, it's a good performance and not a bad PEB.
Okay, Alison, what do you think?
It was quite cinematic. It was very beautifully filmed. You know, in terms of trying to attract younger, more dynamic voters, using Cara Hunter is probably a really good idea because she is such a good speaker, she's such a good performer, and she's a very young woman, which is a demographic that they're clearly targeting. And they did use some of their council candidates, and you know, we know that through the kitchen sink and everything else, that Paul Doherty in the assembly elections didn't come off for them. They're really trying here, I think, in the council elections. As you say, the other people who work in the community, runs the food bank in West Belfast. For that, I do think it was, you know, it was a high production. You could sit and watch it and you wouldn't get bored watching it. What did annoy me yesterday about Conley Smith, who is usually like one of the sharpest media performers, all this carry on with hands. I can't deal with it. It's like somebody media trained you and they've over media trained you too much and they've told you to do that. It's too much. Stop doing it. I don't like it.
Okay, someone who talks with their hands, I can't really criticise that. You see me flailing around on the views. Go on ahead, Alan.
It did have a lot of staring into the distance. If you use it consistently, then it becomes the trope. It's the kind of the image you're trying to go for. But it is a bit weird. I worried a bit at the start because it was like, I know things are difficult at the moment, which is a really difficult thing to say at the beginning. Because if you stop at that point, you go ... you know, kind of. But they then kind of justified it a bit. It did swing then though towards about there was a guy standing in Lisburn Square who's again part of the Moustache and Beard Party who talked about thousands of kids leaving school without GCSEs. Well, 164 left without a GCSE in the last year that we have stats for, so it's not thousands.
Okay, I'm so glad me and you researched all that.
But you know, I know what they were trying to. I know what they were trying to say, but the kind of
rocked in the last minute of research at all.
So if they want to say that it was across the decade, you know, then that's fine. We'll let them away with that. But it was also not a council issue. So so you're kind of, it didn't do a whole lot. We saw council candidates, but we didn't see council issues particularly. Cara, again, you're kind of going to an MLA, but that's because I guess we don't have any. There aren't strong council candidates or outgoing councillors that we would recognise across the country, so that's a bit of a problem for them. We got their version of Park Run is to do a John Hume mural. The Dalai Lama made his way in. I'm sure there was some editorial conversations around that. You know, it was kind of okay. It was well put together, but I didn't like the content.
Me too. It was beautiful.
But if you turn the volume down, it's probably one of the best.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the words quite worked for it, so I'm in mixed kind of marking
I thought
mode.
it was really well shot. I thought the imagery was phenomenal. I thought they actually got a good spread. I thought the use of column was good. I thought the use of Cara was good. The one thing I would have liked to say, I agree with Chris, actually one thing when I heard Cara, it would have been great to have had either Claire Hannah in the image standing given 15-20 seconds or Matthew and profiling some of the wider team, because on the SDLP's local election leaflets it seems to be Colm, Claire and Matthew, or depending on the whatever area, one of those three is on the leaflets with people. I thought again to play to that stronger asset that they have, but look, overall I thought the messaging was broadly consistent. I thought even though it wasn't council issues, but you know, again, how many people are voting on council issues? Probably it's not the party, but it is good to actually put them in there. You did have Paul Doherty in there. You have Granny McNeil as well in there too. I would have liked to have seen more council candidates because they do have others who are actually quite able. And again, particularly when their main rivals in Alliance and Sinn Fein don't have any of that in their PBs, I think the SDLP may have missed a bit of a trick there. But overall, look, very well shot and very well put together. Chris, I'll go to you first of all. What did you give the SDLP out of 10?
I will give this a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10, okay. And Alan?
I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10 because I think it needed more council stuff in it if they're going to feature councillors.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was beautifully shot, but I like my mind wandered halfway through it. You were looking at the images and not that. And as Alan said, there was a lot of the sort of Joey Tribbiani smell of fart acting, wasn't there? Looking off and whatever they were looking at. Yeah, I'm gonna give it. I think because of the fact that the content didn't live up to the images. The two things didn't match.
Yeah.
I would give the guy who filmed it a 10 out of 10,
Yes.
but he's not an SDLP candidate.
Yes.
So I would give and himself, I'll give it a 6.
6 out of 10. Okay, I'm a little bit more charitable. I give it a 7 out of 10 because the imagery did
Yeah.
I think it was worth that alone and how well shot it was. So so I went with a 7 out of 10. Okay, well look, we're going to tot up all the scores here and we're going to come back with the winner of this year's Slugger O'Toole PEB Awards.
We've a couple of jelly babies left if they want as a prize.
Okay, and the results are in for this year's
Eurovision Song Contest.
Slugger O'Toole party election broadcast. And bottom this year, going from first place down to bottom place in the space of a year, is the Ulster Unionist Party with 23 points. Okay, so a bit of a disappointment for them. Second last, we have the SDLP on 25.5 points. And then behind them, we've got Sinn Fein on 27.5 points. And second, we have the DUP on 28.5 points.
They're getting very close.
They're getting very close. And we have the winner of this year's PEB Awards, Alliance, on 29.5. So well done, Alliance Party. You have won the local election, party election broadcast.
Animation won.
So very well done. That just leaves me just to thank my great panel for going through this. We have Chris Brown from Brown O'Connor Communications. We have Alison Morse from the Belfast Telegraph. And our very own Alan Meeben. So thanks very much, guys, for coming through all this. And
we thank you for not subjecting us to all the other smaller party PEBs, which are all there if you want to watch them and you want to score them. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. We don't know.
I'm going to go home and just watch the TVs for kicks and giggles. That's what I'm going to do.
It might be a winner this year. It might have beaten Alliance. You never know.
Perfect, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay.
We'll see you all again at the next election
In 6 months in September.
Dead on.